Hello everyone, I am Aurora CDVA, the VTuber that was never here in the first place.
Aurorus?
In the last episodes of the World of Tutorials, we went through the tutorial of Dark Souls, what I deemed the best tutorial in video games. Jumping then to the invisible tutorial of Half-Life 2, one of the most iconic tutorials in the video game sphere. But this time, we are not focusing on one game. Instead, this is the first episode where we go to analyze a type of tutorial of different games. How do these games handle the players if they do not stop to teach them how to play in the first place? Subnautica is a survival simulator where you are trapped in an alien planet almost completely covered in water, full of terrifying and dangerous creatures, as you are forced to descend into the deepest part of it in order to reach any hope for salvation. So, how did this incredibly influential game introduce the players to its gameplay? We start with a customary cutscene of welcome. Afterwards, we are immediately thrust into a situation where our base of operations is compromised by fire, and we need to put it out with a conveniently placed fire extinguisher. After climbing the stairs, unmissable since they're in the middle of a tiny room, we see the ship that was transporting us destroyed and left to ruin. It's worth to note that said area is technically accessible from the start of the game, but it's an incredibly bad idea to approach it right away, setting immediately a major first goal for the players to try and acquire the tools necessary to go in it. And this is where I would talk about how the game teaches you how to play it. But the reality of the situation is that it doesn't. The most of a guiding hand you have from the game is the artificial intelligence programmed to aid you at staying alive, since the corporation your character works for cannot gain money if you die a horrible death. With some hints on what to do, like, go and grab some lunch, dumbass, your hungry ass is starving. But aside from that, the game never stops you in your track to tell you what to do. You need to see which fish gives you water resources, you need to forge stuff like the scanner to unlock the rest of the craftable items and lore information on the wildlife. You need to explore the different biomes and learn what biome has what threat and what resource in order to progress. Compare this approach to something like a Nintendo 64 Zelda game where you can't breathe for a second without hearing a "Hey, listen!" with the game outright pointing you to the next location, and it feels like a breath of fresh air, ironically enough. But it's still jarring to see that the game has basically no tutorials, aside from a single instance of the invisible tutorial with a fire extinguisher at the start. But in order to properly analyze what's going on, I want to see another game with the same approach: Fear and Hunger. That's quite the jump, let me tell you. Fear and Hunger is a turn-based RPG incredibly notorious for its cruelty and unforgiveness, both in its gameplay and in the story and themes. At first the game didn't really explode in popularity, but little by little, pieces of it were noticed and shared, like the twisted lore of the gods that inhabit this cruel world. And as more people noticed it, eventually Fear and Hunger spread like wildfire, ending up being covered by popular content creators and even jump-starting some creators' careers in the first place. The game opens up with a selection of characters. Only a brief description is offered, not much useful info from that. And once our pick has been made, we are dropped into a skippable narrative text, where we need to shape how our characters lived their lives up to that point of the game. Said decisions modifying your starting equipment, skills, and usable items. Skipping it lands you with a predetermined set of skills and equipment. After that, the game officially starts, and you are immediately on your own. Now, there are some elements of invisible tutorials designed like in Subnautica, like the intro text teaching us that in the game our choices have permanent consequences on our save file, so we should never make half-assed decisions, or how in the starting area after a while you hear a barking of beasts approaching, these beasts being a difficult encounter that will murder your character from a fresh started run, incentivizing the player to enter the dungeon immediately and to keep them on their toes, teaching that no matter how safe a place seems, you are never truly out of danger in this cursed dungeon. You are trapped in a place where fear and hunger reign supreme. The dungeon will feast on you if you do not learn how to survive. And the game never gives you the experience of an untouchable RPG hero on their way to kill God. You are a very fragile human being, at the mercy of the monsters that inhabit its halls. And they have none to spare with you. So, what's happening here? Why are we with two games that couldn't be more different if they tried, having the exact same approach in refusing to teach the players how to play, letting them stumble their way through? Because both games took the decision of creating an incredibly suffocating experience. In both games, the characters end up in a helpless situation, regardless if it's an alien planet full of danger that refuses to let you escape, or a horrible place that I would describe as abandoned by the gods to give you an idea of how bad the situation is, but unfortunately for you, said gods are very present. In both situations, the player is in a narrative where the characters are at the mercy of the unforgiving circumstances, and they need to learn how to navigate them on their own. Even with the circumstances being cruel and unforgiving, neither of the games are needlessly cruel towards the players, and have plenty of helping hands. In Subnautica, you start the game in one of the safest biomes in the game, and you practically need to go out of your way to end up in danger. While in Fear and Hunger, there are a lot of things that the game outright tells you through the NPCs you can encounter, and the various books to teach you how some aspects of the gameplay and optional helping hands work. Both games require the players to learn on their own, because both games offer an incredibly cruel but incredibly fair experience to the players that are willing to approach them, so they can't afford to alienate their intended audiences by taking their hands and guiding them. This is a very difficult decision to take, especially in a day and age where game journalists cannot play a game without the game playing itself. But the gamers that will stick with the game on the long run, willing to learn it, will stay with it in a long time, falling in love with it and supporting it through hell and back. But this isn't the only type of absent tutorial present. There's a whole different approach that I'm going to discuss today, the one used in Hades. Hades is an incredible roguelite that features a Greek setting, featuring many characters from Greek legends with a breathtaking art design. In case it wasn't obvious, this is one of my favorite games. When you initiate a new save file, you immediately start the game with a little bit of exposition and the character starting a run, the core gameplay of this game. There's no explanation of the controls, you are given a safe room where you can look for yourself the commands, and then you can move on with the next room, where after dispatching the enemies, we obtain a prize because of our triumph, in this case a fixated reward on the run, a boon from the goddess Athena. So not only we are forced to interact with a boon system fundamental for this game, but also we can catch a glimpse on how to manage a build through the deity's boons. The game doesn't go out of its way to explain any of this, leaving the obvious stuff for the players to learn on their own as they navigate through the game, trusting their intelligence in understanding the base stuff without talking down to them in any way. And after a while, a new player will die one way or another, ending up in the main hub of the game, with all the interactable characters in Hades' court, limited by the start of the run, yet to unlock all the cool shit stage of the game, where we can access our room with the mirror that lets us unlock additional abilities as we gather resources in the game. And lastly, the last room before we properly begin a run, a terrace with all the weapons that Zagreus has in his arsenal, yet to unlock in the game proper. The room after Athena in the first run will always be a key to unlock at least the bow, teaching how to unlock the other weapons for the player, and after that, the game lets the player know how the weapon works, letting them experiment freely before a run can properly start, with not only an explanation of which button does what attack, but also how to trigger different attacks. The game never stops the player to explain how it works, but it has the option for the player to stop and read how things works for themselves, letting them learn as they need, which is a high contrast with the previous no-tutorial games showcased, since the atmosphere is highly different from those games, and the lack of a tutorial here is because the odds are against you in a different way. Zagreus has a safe home to return to and in lore infinite tries, with many people to talk as they give you more options to escape the underground. What little knowledge he starts with is nothing more of what the player can test and learn for themselves, having to discover all the additional tools at their disposal on their own as they progress. So, the games where they do not feature a tutorial are usually unforgiving games in a desperate situation where you need to learn how to move in the game and survive on your own, leaving you the tools in the game itself to learn how to navigate through it, leaving the player to discover things for themselves, with Hades having a more interactive approach without hiding throughout the game how things works, but refusing to stop the player to explain even the most basic stuff that the player can learn on their own through experimentation. This is the best type of tutorial a game could have in general, because it still explains stuff to the players as they explore the game, but upholds the gamers to a minimum standard of understanding things on their own and learning how things work. The game trusts the players into handling themselves, as the players trust the game in return. There are many instances of invisible tutorial in these games, but unlike the proper invisible tutorials in games like Half-Life 2 or Super Mario, the player is not learning the game in a predetermined level selection where the developers studied the stage so the players can naturally learn through invisible means how things in the game work. Many elements of these games, without a tutorial, are randomized from run to run, so you are never bound to have a consistent handcrafter baby first stage, with the only exception in Hades, where its introductory run, when you boot a new save file, you start always with the same run, but after that, every single new run is randomly generated. I do understand that this approach does not resonate with a lot of people that want to be taught how the game works and want a more streamlined and intended experience. But this is the last purpose of this type of tutorial. It weeds out this type of players from playing the game. Since if you are not the type to having to learn every single thing about the game on your own through patient experimentation, trial and error, these types of games are not for you, and that's okay. Of these games, the only one I managed to play for myself from start to end is Hades. As I said, one of my favorite games ever. I cannot, for the life of me, manage to get so far in either Subnautica or Fear and Hunger. These types of games and these type of experiences are a matter of acquired taste and dedication, and it speaks volume on their quality as games, because even if they're not for you, they're still an incredible work of art. They know what type of people they want to appeal to and stick with said decision without any compromises. But what if you want to have a type of tutorial where you teach your players how to play the game without forcing it down their throats? Is there a way to make said teaching optional? We will see how in the next episode of A World of Tutorials. If you like the show, please like, comment and subscribe. A little bit of support goes a long way.